On this edition of the NESN Red Sox podcast, we'll break down the Red Sox' slow start to the season and whether it's time to push the panic button in Boston.
And we'll get into Chris Sale, Mr. Softball himself. We'll talk about his ugly start to the season. Should the Red Sox already be regretting that contract?
Swing and a miss, strike three, it's over. The Red Sox have won the World Championship.
The Red Sox walk it off. Mookie Betts. That ball is gone. The X-Man strikes. What a bullet by Devers.
I love to see the exit velocity on that one.
It's time to party.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the NESN Red Sox podcast. I'm Ricky Doyle, joined as always by Dakota Randall. Dakota, the first podcast of the new season. Last time we checked in, it was just prior to opening day, and a lot's changed.
Yeah, last time we had an episode, the Red Sox were good.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be good.
Well,
so this is the disaster episode.
So, yeah, well, we didn't really have one last year, considering from tape to tape it was pretty smooth sailing. I mean, we had some...
You wouldn't have known it if you listened to my my diatribes all year.
Of course, we did our best to nitpick, but yeah, for the most part, there wasn't a whole lot of high-stress situations at all in 2018, but not the case this year, which we'll get into throughout this episode. But I think we should start at least with just the overall, the ring ceremony, opening day, and whatnot. Just, a nice day at the yard, I guess.
That's what you, okay. That's where you want to start?
Do you have any thoughts on the World Series ring and the ceremony before we get into being negative
fine.
Nancy's?
It was fine.
Well, that's my thing, is you seem to be like, you're a little frustrated by
I just don't. I think
in general.
I just don't understand it with a game, with the pace of play issues in baseball. I mean, the game's already too long, and then you're going to make people sit there and watch an hour-long ceremony. I mean, I understand.
Coming from the guy who you wanted each player
well,
to have his moment in the sun.
Well, no, I didn't
complaining about them not introducing.
I didn't want
guys.
that. I just thought it was weird not having it. It was just different because usually there is. But yeah, no, it was strange at first that they weren't introducing all the players by names, because then they get their ovation. But they did it later on when they introduced them on the first baseline.
Yeah.
But regardless, it's just, I remember watching the Golden State Warriors ring ceremony before the start of this NBA season, and it lasted like 5 to 10 minutes at the very most. And I get it; it's like a third of the amount of players. But I mean, not really. I mean, there's 28 players or something 25 men on the roster, and then a bunch of coaches. It shouldn't take that long. It's just, I understand when the Red Sox have a rich history. They have all these players, and the Patriots were there. And I was not a fan of having the Patriots there yesterday. I get it; it's cool. I saw somebody on Twitter say, "Welcome to Boston, where we can find a reason to complain about having 2 championships celebrated on the same day."
Yeah, this is so true.
So it's tough, but I don't know. It's just, for me, it's always a little too much.
Yeah, I didn't have any issues with it. I thought it was I didn't think it felt that long either. I thought it moved.
I will say they did a better job eliminating a lot of the cringy stuff that is pretty atypical of Red Sox ceremonies. There wasn't some long speech, some really obnoxious, wordy.
Yeah, I thought it was what it was.
Yeah, there wasn't some overly verbose soliloquy from Joe Castiglione on the field. It didn't get too obnoxious, but it's just, to me, it's like, what do we need an hour to do this?
Yeah. I mean,
but that's just me.
Anyways, I figured I'd see what you thought of it. The fact that we're sitting here agonizing at all over a ring ceremony is, I love
that Kurt Schilling was there. That was my favorite part.
I'm sure he did.
No, I just thought it was, I didn't expect it. I just, it was random.
The rings are pretty sick, in my opinion.
The rings are cool.
I really like the rings.
I'm not a big ring guy, personally. I just don't particularly care that much. I mean,
see, I am a ring guy.
You ever been to the Hall of Fame and seen they have a thing with all the World Series rings ever? Yeah. They have a thing that has each one from every World Series. So that's kind of cool.
I like looking back at all the different rings, and I also like how you get the, there's a rationale to the diamonds they put in it and stuff, adding up the regular season wins. There's a backstory to every single aspect of a championship ring, which I think is pretty cool. And I like these ones a lot because they're, especially stacked up against the 13 ones. They're a little less busy and nice and sleek and, Just a good looking ring.
They are good looking rings. I don't know. I just always look at them and I'm like, do these guys really need a bunch of diamonds?
Yeah. Well, anyways,
could the money spent on these diamonds go to something more productive?
The ring
like fixing the bullpen
is really the well, and an interesting plot twist. The bullpen has actually been pretty good this year. But so let's get into that, because the ring is the one of the only pretty aspects of opening day in both the season in general. Red Sox 3-9. They came home for the opening day ring ceremony after a 11-game road trip on the West Coast. 11 games in 11 days, which is a pretty tough swing. Not to make excuses or anything, but now they got the off day on Wednesday, which is when we're recording this, and they get the Blue Jays on Thursday, followed by 4 games against the Orioles. So it seems like a good time to get right if you're the Red Sox.
One would think, yeah.
Yeah, one would think, with the level of competition coming into your barn.
But the way they're going, Chris Davis, who's on a historic over 49 streak, is going to come in here and go 3 for 4 with 2 RBIs.
True.
You know it's happening.
Well, that's the thing. Not only the Red Sox sit here at 3-9, only the Royals and Reds, who are sitting at 2-8, have worse records from a winning percentage standpoint.
How about Rocktober 3-9 too?
Well, they're also, I was going to say, that Red Sox minus 28 run differential, which is second worst in Major League Baseball behind the aforementioned Colorado Rockies.
Which is crazy.
They've surrendered an MLB worst 79 runs. So a litany of issues plaguing the Red Sox right now is kind of just getting the overall sense, it seems to be divided as to whether people are panicking or not. Like, it's starting, obviously, with each loss and with each questionable performance. The panic meter starts to sway in the direction of people freaking out a little bit more. But so far, it seems like it's been, it depends on who you talk to. So my question to you is, are you panicking at all? Is it time to panic about the Red Sox?
Well, my issue isn't. My problem is with the word. I don't think it's time to panic, but it is time to be absolutely concerned. You should be concerned about the team, because the fact of the matter is, I think it's hyperbole to say you're panicking and the season's lost and you're flushing it down the toilet. The reality is you're 6 games behind the Tampa Bay Rays, and I, for one, believe the Rays are going to be a good team this year. I don't know if they're going to win the division, but I think they could be a playoff team. And you're 6 games out, and you don't have to look too far on Twitter right now to see all these stats that say, of all the teams ever that have started 3-9, or of all the defending champions that have started like this, it's like, it's always 0 for 53 that have made it to the playoffs, or 1 made it to the playoffs. Like, they're going against history now. If they would come back from this start, it would be unprecedented. The good thing is I think they have the roster to do it. But, the numbers are what they are. And, they're 3-9 and 6 games out. And I think the Rays, the Yankees, and the Red Sox are all playoff caliber. And it's just, the easiest path to defending is winning your division and avoiding that wild card game. And if you keep spiraling like this, your best chance is going to be playing in the wild card. And that's just not where you want to be. So I think you absolutely should be concerned. Panic, no, because there's still so much time. And what you have to realize is, teams all the time go on 3-9 stretches throughout the season.
Right.
Not starting a season 3-9, but
I agree
stretches.
with you that there should be a distinction made between the two, because, for instance, if we're sitting here on a scale of 1 to 10, like if you were to ask me my level of concern about this team, I would probably say I'm going to say it's like only around a 3. Like, I'm not that concerned just yet about the Red Sox. But my level of annoyance at the way they've started the season is up around 7, 8, creeping into the 9s.
Yeah,
because it's just the way in which they've started off. It's just, I don't know.
For me, it's not so much annoyance with the results. Obviously you're annoyed with the results because they're atrocious. But to me, it's more an annoyance with this sort of cavalier approach that they've had ever since they won. They showed up to spring. They made a concerted effort to have everyone back off. They said, listen, we're going to take things slow. We're the defending world champs. We know what we're doing. We have all this. And, they kind of made it seem like they knew exactly what they were doing. They go out. They have a crappy spring. I think they went 12-25 or something like that. Or I don't know. I bet they were the second worst record in spring in all of baseball. And they said, well, obviously it's spring. You don't make anything out of that. And then it's carried over into the regular season, and they're now 3-9. And we keep hearing them say, David Price the other day said, we're going to be the team that won 119 games. We worked last season. We won the World Series. It's like, you know, that's last season. You got to turn the page. That I don't believe necessarily in the World Series hangover, because I just don't think human beings operate like that. But I do believe in being arrogant and overconfident, and you know, in the cavalier nature of the way they've gone about things, you could see it in the offseason. Just for them to believe, to have the conceit to think that, you know, they're above getting a good bullpen arm. That they're above having a closer. That they can figure it out with Matt Barnes, who's still hitting guys and yanking it to the backstop.
The fact that that Alex Cora said specifically that they weren't turning the page, you know, basically indicating that turning the page is what you do when you're coming off a negative season, and the fact that they're just writing a new chat. Like, there was just sort of, the messaging involved was sort of weird.
And again, it's tough. What are you supposed to do? Like, it's hard to say things that are going to please everybody after World Series season, because everyone's looking for one soundbite that they can go, you know, look at that. They're not going about it the right way.
I agree with you. It was just like, it was almost like they felt like they had all the answers to the test already after going through what they went through last year. And it's like, you know, you spend your entire time in high school really good at science or something, and like, you get to college and you expect it to be a cakewalk, and then in your first class you're with a bunch of kids that are just as smart as you, and all of a sudden you don't look quite as smart. Like,
right.
You gotta take a step back and understand that it's a whole different situation now than it was last year, even though you're returning the same cast for the most part.
Right, and you're not. It just the arrogance is what bugs me. Like, you're not as good as you think you are, and that's not a slight on them. It's that nobody is as good as the Red Sox were last year. They had everything Cora did worked last year. And that's not to say the team wasn't good. They were the best team. They deserved to win the World Series. They did win 108 games and set all those records. But nobody's that good. You don't put up those numbers without some things going your way and some luck involved. And so for them to think that it's just going to happen again, like, oh, well, we're all good, so start, whatever. It's not how it works. You're not so good, you know, that you don't have to, you know, still do things, you know, the way you did them last season. It's just, I don't know.
What needs to happen, though, is there needs to be that acknowledgement that, okay, maybe we didn't approach spring training or the early portion of the season with the right, I don't know, mental strategies is the way to put it. Like, I don't know how to really describe it, but
we came in with the wrong mindset, and I mean,
yeah, it's what it feels like, a mindset thing. And in that regard, it feels very similar to 2014.
Well, it looks like they thought they could go out over the first month and just play glorified softball, because they wanted to, you know, ease into the season and not overwork guys and not stress everybody out, and to sort of take a light approach. And, well, you know, too bad you look up now, you're 3-9 and you're 6 games out. You can't just play softball in the big leagues and go, well, our guys are going to go out there and throw 88, and we're going to just kind of lob it up there, and we'll get by because we're that good. We're the Red Sox. We won 108 games. It doesn't work that way. Not to mention, now you are the World Series champions. You have a target on your back. Every team is going to give you their best. You can't go out there and just slap it out there and expect to win because you play at Fenway Park. It's
just funny, too, how, like, you know, how the lens changes that you're looking at through. Like, in other words, like, everything that, as you mentioned, everything they did last year, all the buttons that they pushed, it all worked. And
all of them.
So when you take this very aggressive approach on the bases, or, you know, at the plate, and it works, you come out smelling like a rose. Now when you take that same approach and it doesn't work, it suddenly looks like you're sloppy. And that's why where I was going with that is it feels very similar to 2014. You know, on the heels of that 13 season when they talked about being relentless, I think was the word they kept using, and like taking the extra base, and just
grinding out at bats, the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's like,
got a bunch of gamers on this team.
And it just was constantly driven into you that, like, they had this formula that was foolproof, and then they get to 2014, it doesn't work, and for the majority of the season, all you had was a bunch of guys pointing to their championship pedigree, insisting that it was going to all work out in the end. When in reality, that team was doomed from the start. So what has to happen with this team is that there just needs to be that acknowledgement, finally, that yes, we are turning the page. Sure, you want to have that championship swagger. You want to say, you know, why turn the page when you have a good thing going? But until you do that and you just get caught up in what took place last year, I just think you're doing yourself a huge disservice. But the one thing I will say about this team that is very different from the 14 team is there's far more talent.
Well, absolutely. So that's why ultimately I'm not that worried about.
That's where I wanted to draw that distinction between level of concern and level of annoyance. Because concern, I'm not there yet.
But and I agree that they have too much talent. However, you know, so for me, there are some things that you could legitimately panic about. And so I have, but I wonder if you have some too. Do you you can go first.
No, so let's get into that. What is it? What's most concerning about this whole thing?
Well,
I guess aside from the starting pitching, I think we.
Well, no, that is it. It is the starting pitching.
I think we both can agree that's just been.
But that's a major thing. So the Red Sox won last season, large because of their great offense, and they had great starting pitching. And listen, if Rick Porcello is going to be bad Rick Porcello, and that's not a huge if. I mean, let's be honest. His first season in Boston, he was bad. Then he won a Cy Young. Then he was bad. And last season, he started out good, but he ended up being average to kind of bad a lot. And he had a good playoffs. But I think I love Rick Porcello, and I love his mentality on the mound. I think and he's a great guy for this city, and he can handle the pressure. But let's be honest. I'd say at least half of his time in Boston, he's been bad. So if you get bad Rick Porcello and you get what Eduardo Rodriguez has always been, and we don't need to go down that road. We know what he is. Unreliable, gets hurt, can't go more than 5 innings, just not a reliable starter. And by all accounts, he's the same guy, despite all this talk in the spring of him having this new wipeout slider that was going to dominate. So if you get that, and then Chris Sale is what he looks right now, and we talked about this in our last episode. I, for one, believe you're never going to see the old Chris Sale again. If those things all sort of hold firm, and I really don't think they're that big of ifs, you need Nathan Eovaldi and
I was going to say,
doesn't
that make Nathan Eovaldi a huge wild card?
It makes him a huge wild card, and I like Nathan Eovaldi, but there's no reason.
But that's as much of an if as any of the other.
Yeah, and you just have no reason to believe that Nathan Eovaldi is going to be a great starting pitcher. I think he can be a good to very good starting pitcher, but not an ace. Maybe we'll see, but. And then I think you kind of know what you're going to get from David Price. So it's just, you're starting pitching if you're going to compete in the American League and beat the Yankees, beat that offense, beat the Astros. Some of these elite teams, your starting pitching has to be as good as it was last year. And Chris Sale obviously was a huge part of that. And then you were able to mix and match in the postseason because you had rovers, you had guys moving around, and it worked out. But if this is what it's going to be like, and it's not going to be this bad, you're not going to have Porcello giving up 9 runs. But if you have all of your guys are around 4 ERAs, I don't think you're making the playoffs.
It's a wide range of outcomes for the starting rotation. And like you said, it's not going to be this bad all season.
No, but I could see each starter getting around a 4 ERA, and if that happens, you're not going anywhere.
Maybe not, but I do think you're good enough to probably make the playoffs.
Maybe,
I think if you take the 2 extremes, one of them being what it is now, which is MLB worst, 8.98 ERA, just terrible FIP. Just no matter how you slice it, they've just been the worst rotation in baseball to this point. And then on the other end of the spectrum, could be among the top 3 to 5 maybe across baseball if their talent equates to if their performance matches their talent and they're firing on all cylinders. So it's such a wide range that for the purposes of this exercise and this early in the season, I'm gonna just assume that it's gonna land somewhere in the middle. Like maybe we're looking at just a middle of the road rotation, and if that's the case, I do think the rest of the talent on this roster, particularly offensively, is gonna be enough to have them hang in there. Like, for me, I mentioned the 14 team is what this sort of feels like in the early stages, but from like an overall talent standpoint and whatnot, like, I don't know, maybe we're looking at like the 16 and 17 team, where they're good enough to win the division, or at least contend for the division all the way through, and then once you get to the playoffs, then that's when you start to get exposed a little bit. Like maybe they don't have that little it factor that they had last year. I mean, or maybe they do, and that's what we're going to figure out throughout the rest of the season. But from, just looking at the rotation thus far, which is, quite clearly the biggest concern, I just think you're ultimately probably going to get just somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
because I do think, and you can complain all you want about how they approach spring training and how they ramped up their, their starting pitchers in particular, and just how they really approached everything down in Fort Myers. But I think there is something to these guys shaking off a little bit of rust. I mean, the Sale thing, now you're 3 starts in, that's getting a little concerning with the lack of swing and miss and just where the velocity's been at, although it was a little bit better on opening day against the Blue Jays. But I do think there is that element of, just shaking off the rust and getting up to where you want to be. And when that time comes, if we're sitting here in a month and they're still stumbling around, then I think that you're looking at more towards that middle of the pack rotation. But I'm not ready to write off this group. Not by any means.
Me either. But I think so much is dependent on whether or not, what kind of Chris Sale you're going to get. That to me is the one thing, and I think people are really twisting themselves into pretzels right now, trying to make excuses for him and believe that it's all going to be all right, and I just still don't see it. I don't know where you fall on this, but I think, there is real reason to be concerned about that contract and what, let alone what he's going to give you in 4 years, in 2022. And just, I think, their ability to turn things around and get somewhere close to the team they were last year is dependent on having a bona fide ace. And I don't look at Chris Sale right now and think I don't see any way he gets back to that. He hasn't been that since July of last year.
Right.
Other than that one start against the Orioles where he came out throwing 100, and then since then he hasn't been anywhere close. So it's the Sale thing that really concerns me. I'm willing to give it more time. You have to, but I think the most concerning stat I saw yesterday was that it took 83 fastballs for him to induce a swing and miss. He got someone to swing and miss on a fastball yesterday. It was his 83rd fastball of the season. He hadn't induced a swing and miss on his previous 82 fastballs. Yeah. So then that's not.
I mean, even he said himself after the game that he's never pitched this poorly or really been in this situation before.
And that's not all velocity. That's not just velocity. It's velocity. It's location. It's just in general. And the other big thing that concerns me is just guys look comfortable in the box against him, and they looked comfortable during the playoffs, and they looked comfortable against him down the stretch of last season. And maybe you can attribute all that to him being hurt last season, but I don't know. It's just. It's been a while since I've watched Chris Sale and thought guys looked uncomfortable against him in the batter's box.
Yeah. No, this is the velocity thing was where everybody wants to start with him, but I don't know. I don't find that's not the biggest concern with me is, not the velocity. It's that you mentioned. It's the other stuff.
Well, location. His location is, and that was the problem in the playoffs is he would throw some junk soft changeup up there that would just miss. Vasquez would set up down low, and Sale would miss high, and it would get smashed, and it's continued into the season. And it's just, he's throwing all soft sliders at like 72 and slow changeups, all the soft stuff. He's barely throwing his fastball, and maybe that's part of a longer plan, but
but I hate that.
That feels like it's such a cop-out.
I hate the idea of we're saving bullets for October. That's not how it works. I think it was Brad Lidge that said on MLB Network.
I heard that, yeah.
The other day, that's not how you function as a pitcher. And you could just say, well, who the hell is Brad Lidge?
Right. And the one thing about that is he was a closer. So in his mind, you would never save bullets because you have one inning.
But I think there's something to that. I don't know how many starters go into a season saying, let's take it easy in April because I know October is going to roll around. And if you do have that approach, it's a jackass mentality.
It is, but the only other thing you could say is maybe it's the Red Sox legitimately trying to come up with something new because the numbers are what they are. Chris Sale every year of his career is faded. So maybe it's just this new idea they have, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's a cover.
I think it's a figuring out stage of seeing how they can extract the best Chris Sale possible with what he is now, maybe. There is sort of like a experimentation stage going on a little bit.
Yeah.
Seeing maybe he doesn't have to have that velocity and maybe you can get guys out this way. So if that's what they mean with that, then I agree. Then maybe they are, quote unquote, saving bullets for the October. Maybe there is that trial and error approach, but that I wouldn't I don't view that as saving bullets. I view it as just working on some things, trying some things out. But I don't know.
And he did hit 95 yesterday, but it's are we at the point now with Chris Sale where we're like, oh God, he hit 95, thank God, everything's good. If that's where he's at right now, then he just feels miles away from becoming what the Red Sox need him to be, which is why I'm concerned about it, because maybe he does become Chris Sale by August or July or something, but by then, it might be too late. Again, if you keep getting same Eduardo Rodriguez, which is whatever, or, average Rick Porcello, and the rest of the team continues to play this kind of sloppy brand of baseball, you're going to look up and you're going to be out of it. You're going to be fighting for a wild card. It can happen that fast. People like to say baseball season's so long, you can turn it around, but not when the Yankees are probably going to win near 100 games. Or maybe they have a lot of guys on the injury list too, so maybe they have a bad go of it. I don't know, but it's just you're playing with fire if you wait too long. And the years after, those middle years, a few years ago, the Red Sox were finishing in last place. The same thing was happening. It was getting to July, late June. They were hovering around 500, a game above, and everyone said, you know, there's plenty of time to turn it around, even though we're 8 games out of first, and it wasn't. It was too late, and they never got it back.
See, I think Chris Sale is good enough. Like, why I said that I'm not concerned about the velocity is he just strikes me as somebody who, even if the velocity is, you know, permanently down, like he never gets back to where he was from that standpoint. I don't know. Doesn't he just strike you as a guy who'll be able to figure it out? Like, so many guys nowadays are forced to reinvent themselves, and like he's by no means towards the tail end of his career. I mean, he just turned 30, so in theory, he should have a few years of peak performance ahead of him.
I mean, you'd think, but look at the guy. He's a rail. He's the skinniest guy in the game, just about. So it's just, you look at him, it's a special case because it's this freak, tall, skinny guy that was throwing 98. Of course, his body was going to break down, and you know, for him to defy that would be, you know, insane. So I just
find it hard to believe that he suddenly Chris Sale is going to have this pathetic season and he's never going to be a good pitcher ever again. Like, I just think that we could be coming to sort of and again, this is 3 starts, but maybe this season, at least in the early going, is like that sort of fork in the road where he has to reinvent himself a little bit. Like, I mean, look at somebody like Justin Verlander. I mean, it's 2 different cases, obviously, but like, I don't know. You come to that point where it's like you're gonna go either one way or the other. And
Verlander's
I think he could make adjustments. I mean, David Price has had to do it. I mean, look at him. His velocity went down, and he sort of reinvented himself to a certain extent. So I just think, I don't know. Is one person, probably across Major League Baseball, I think is going to be willing to do what it takes to rectify an undesirable situation? It's probably Chris Sale. This guy literally took jerseys, took scissors to a jersey to get his way. I just feel like, gun to my head, I think Chris Sale is going to be fine. Maybe he's not the elite number 1 that we've become accustomed to seeing, but
which is why it's like, you know, it's frustrating when you look at it, and you know, the Red Sox brass comes out there and says, we screwed up the John Lester negotiation, we're not going to do it again. I think in their hearts they know they gave David Price too much money, even though it worked out, whatever. And then it's just, you know, are we ever going to get it right with a 30-year-old left-hander? I don't know how you can feel good about that contract. Maybe he does figure it out, but are you telling me in year 4 Chris Sale is going to be worth, what, $25 million a year, whatever it is? It's just, I get it. It's the message it sent. You wanted to lock him up. He does a lot in the clubhouse too, and he is Chris Sale, but it's just.
Yeah, I mean that.
I talked about it just the last episode. Why I thought they could have waited and everything would have been fine, and it's just.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting point of just how much money did they actually save by signing him this season as opposed to waiting and like, even if he
nothing. It's the Red Sox.
You know, even if he was regular Chris Sale, like the Cy Young caliber pitcher, and you got to the end of the year, like. It still was probably going to be in the general ballpark of what he ended up getting. So.
And I'm just convinced that he is a guy that would have signed here no matter what, that he wanted to be here. So, and if the Red Sox were comfortable giving him this deal, I have to believe that a year later, next year, they would have been comfortable signing him too if he went out and had a great season. So I don't understand what the rush was all about, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's obvious. The starting pitching needs to get better. Like, that's all there is to it, and I think it'll get there. I mean, it's just a lot of these games too. You can it comes down to just lack of execution, which to me just strikes me. You know, with the start is they're just leaving pitches up in the zone, or just things that are uncharacteristic of the middle of the season, but I don't think it's far-fetched to expect in the early going.
Yeah,
especially when you have that. Abbreviated spring training, I guess, which that's what drives me nuts though about spring training in general. Not to go on a tangent here, but like, I already think spring training's too long. It's absurd that like you have a month and a half to gear up for a baseball season, and then the fact that you're seeing a starter for what like 1 or 2 outings, and it's not until the end of spring training. Like, I don't know. I hate spring training, but anyways.
I know. It just I look at him and it looks like the season snuck up on him. Yeah. And to me, you know, that has to go on the manager a little bit. Not saying all the blame goes on Cora, but you know, at some point he's got to take some of the blame, and he has taken some of it. It's just, you know, he got all the credit when they won last year, and then when they lose, he has to get some of the criticism. So You know, it's his job to make sure his team shows up ready to play. And how can you look at the Red Sox and think for a second they were ready to play this season? You know, and it was the schedule, an 11-game road trip to start the season, the longest in team history. Did that play a factor? Definitely. But 3-9 is, you know, there's no excuse for going 3-9 when you're the defending World Series champions.
Well, on top of the starting pitching too, a couple of things that have stood out to me as concerning is the base running.
Yeah, but they were so bad early on last year, and especially during the Farrell seasons, and then they cleaned it up really well in the middle part of the season last year and down the stretch. That I'm not worried about the base running.
That's my point.
It looked like those base running errors were just straight out of frustration.
This goes back to the whole distinguishing between concern and annoyance, because I think a lot of these things are fixable.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of these issues seem to be sort of mental lapses, complacency. Like, I don't know if anybody would be willing to admit that, but that's just what it feels like from on the outside looking in. That, like, I mean, balls dropping in the outfield between Jackie Bradley and Mookie Betts. Like, that's not going to happen in August. No. I would like to think, because you're talking about all-world defenders.
Right.
Like,
yeah. Well, that's a one-off thing. You know,
but there's been some situations defensively, in addition to on the bases, that it's like, what's happening here?
Well, we haven't seen, unless I've missed something, we haven't seen a single good, like, you know, kind of highlight defensive play, have we? You know, not like we saw with that, you know, in Oakland with the center fielder there, and then Chapman at third, making all kinds of great game-changing sort of defensive plays. It's just we haven't seen anything like that where, you know, the Red Sox have stepped up and made a play.
Right.
You know, make a play, whether it's a big hit to bust you out of this thing. You know, there are opportunities. You know, Mookie Betts had an opportunity yesterday. There's been opportunities in these games for guys to get big hits. They haven't gotten it. Getting out of jams, you know, buckling down and saying, all right, this guy's on second and third with, you know, one out, but whatever, I'm going to strike these guys out, or make a big defensive play. There just hasn't been any of that yet. And, you know, part of that is I think it just kind of snowballs when things are going poorly for you. And part of it is I just don't think, you know, they're ready to play and that the season snuck up on them. So I think it's just a combination of factors. And, again, my biggest concern is that it just takes too long to fix. I'm not worried
That's why it needs to change now. There needs to be that just sort of acknowledgement. And I think it is starting to creep in a little bit. I think, you know, well, the hope obviously was that the things were going to turn around with that win on the last game of the road trip in Arizona, the bullpen game winning 1-0. They've had some weird wins, by the way. The 3 wins that they've had. I mean, you had the Mitch Moreland clutch home run in Seattle, the Mookie Betts double in the 9th inning in Oakland that kicked off the bag. That sort of, you looked at that and you're like, well, maybe this is the break that they need.
I mean, when you do this, normally when you have it, when you make a statement like this, you can say, well, you can play that game in the other way too, but you could really make a case the Red Sox should be 0-12.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. Like, especially the Mitch Moreland game, that's a game you should have lost. I mean, he had a ridiculous home run. So right there, because the other games haven't been close. You've legitimately lost all of those games. So let's say it's really 2-10 that you should be. And then, yeah, you have a 1-0 game where that could have gone either way, and then whatever the other one was in Oakland. So I mean, they could, and that was where Mookie Betts got the double down the line. So
yeah, the losses have been pretty.
The losses have been convincing. The wins have not been convincing.
Yeah, exactly. So, the losses, you haven't looked at them and said that was one that they should have won that got away.
They are very much the 3-9 team that you see.
True, but so I don't know. It's just like I said, my level of concern about their ability to right the ship and make the playoffs and contend for another World Series it's pretty minimal at this point. But the level of just general, like, you know, what the hell is happening here, get it together sort of mentality it's getting pretty high because it needs to be figured out soon. Otherwise, you know, it's going to get too late. Like, I don't think they're ever going to get to a point, even if everything went south. Like, worst case scenario, I don't think that this team is going to be like a last place team or what that 2014 team was on the heels of the 2013 World Series. No. Because, like, you look at that 14 team, and I think, like, everybody can now finally agree that the 2013 team was kind of a fluke. That was like a very fluky World Series.
Yeah.
You get that on the heels of the 2011 collapse and the awful 2012. And then you get the 2013 team that everything went well, and then you suck again in 14. So, like, there was a precedent there for them to suck again. Whereas, like, now this team is coming off a World Series And even the 2 years prior, they were division winners. So, like, this is a good team. It's a 3-year sample of being a really good team, one being an amazing team. So I just don't expect them to completely fall off a cliff and be terrible for the entire season.
No. On that sort of train of thought, has there been anything that you've been encouraged by so far early in the season? For me, it's the bullpen.
Well, yeah, it's hard not to be encouraged by that.
And again, I mean, against who? Against the Mariners, the Athletics, the D-backs, and the Jays. So
it's also one thing I will say about the bullpen, real quick, is that, like, I still don't have a firm grasp on it, though. Like, they've been good from a numbers and performance standpoint, but, like, we still don't really have any clarity as far as roles and stuff go because they haven't been in the situations that they expect to be in throughout the season. Right.
So my only takeaway is just sort of watching them, I think they might be good enough to help you get. You might be able to get by with it. Not in the playoffs. Like, they absolutely will need to add somebody at this deadline. I mean, unless someone comes up from Pawtucket or Portland and really just blows doors. But I mean, if they don't add somebody from now until the end of the season, I mean, it's baseball malpractice. So it's baseball malpractice. I'm not calling for anybody's jobs. I'm just saying. But I think, I look at it. I think Ryan Brazier has the mentality, maybe to be a closer, maybe not. Like, I don't know. I have to see him more. But he definitely, I think, has the mentality to be a high leverage reliever for this team, which is important. And I think Matt Barnes does too. I still don't like Barnes as a closer. You saw it yesterday. I mean, he had a good first few outings, but then he goes out yesterday, hits a guy, commits a wild pitch, and it's just that's what you can't have as a closer. I mean, we saw it with Craig Kimbrell. When it went bad, it was because of command. I'm not saying every team is going to have this great closer, but I just don't think he has the stuff to be a closer because anything like that can happen with him with a 1-run lead. And so to me, Brazier's the guy, and I think he can. But beyond those guys, I mean, it's take your pick of Brandon Workman, Tyler Thornburg, and the rest of these guys. They're not great. I don't think they're terrible. They're just kind of okay, and a few okay middle relievers, and then a couple decent high leverage relievers, I think, are enough to get you in contention in September. So then it's who do you add and what pieces come up from the minors to help you the rest of the way. So obviously we have a way to go in that regard.
Yeah.
But
great irony. The bullpen, which is supposed to be the biggest flaw of this team, responsible for one of the wins so far, it being just good all around. But then that game in Arizona with Hector Velasquez starting. I mean, starters are 0-8. Red Sox starter does not have a win yet.
Chris Sale's 0-3 with a 9 ERA.
It's wild. But to your point with the bullpen, it feels like Matt Barnes is going to be sort of that rover to get the big outs. I mean, that's what it feels like, that they're going to bring him in the key spots to face the meat of the order. I mean, that's basically what they did in Arizona and then turned to Brazier for the save. So, Matt Barnes got that first save opportunity of the year, and it seemed like, okay, we're off and running with Matt Barnes as the closer. But, ever since then, it seems like Brazier's going to get his chances too, and they're really not going to have that closer. Yeah, maybe they do eventually, but until this approach fails, it seems like they're going to rely on Barnes for some key outs, whether it's in the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning, and then just kind of take it from there.
Yeah, and I don't mind that approach. I think it's a little risky because who knows? I guess in theory you'd like to have that lockdown closer, but if you don't have it, I think what they've kind of come up with is the next best option. So we'll see how it goes. But again, to your point, we're not going to know until they get in high leverage spots. So we'll find out then.
I think in general their offense has been fine.
Yeah, it's been fine. It's hard to tell because I think the way the starters have, how poorly the starters have been has deflated the offense at times. And it's easy for us to sit here and say, well, just keep hitting and get hit yourselves out of it. It doesn't matter what the starters do, but I think when the starters have been this bad, and it's you go out and again you get a 2-0 lead yesterday, and then you're down 5-2, and it just keeps happening. And so sometimes the offense has lacked punch in those middle innings yesterday. It didn't, it was pretty lifeless. But in general, I agree with you. I don't think you really can complain. They haven't been given an opportunity to sort of get in sort of a routine and sort of get a rhythm going and have everything sort of click on all cylinders because they're like, we don't know. We might be down 10-0 in this game. We might. We don't know how much we're going to have to score.
But I guess that's sort of where I'm going with this is that, like, I still don't feel like they're ever really out of a game.
No, me
because their offense has shown an ability even this season to put runs on the board late in the game. Like I mentioned, the Moreland clutch home run in Seattle. Just like they're even in games in which they've come up short, they've still rallied a little bit. Like, you know, even yesterday, like they
showed a little bit. Yeah,
you know, they brought the go-ahead run to the plate with Betts. It was the game in Seattle. Unfortunately for them, the third baseman just turned into a puddle and had like 75 errors in the ninth inning.
I still haven't seen that clip. I was asleep, and I've been trying to find video of that, and I can't find it anywhere because I woke up and I saw that.
In Seattle, they probably burned all the visual evidence because it was ugly.
I woke up and I heard that a guy made 3 consecutive throwing errors at third, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" I have to see this, and I haven't been able to see a video of it.
Yeah, it was like this is Little League. You know, it was like the Little League kid. I was expecting tears to start flowing. The third one was just like. It's just completely a routine ground ball, ate him up, and then he spiked it into the dirt. Like, it was. Eek.
Was it one of those ones where you're watching and you're like, man, I feel bad for this guy?
A little bit, yeah. Like, I had like secondhand embarrassment.
Yeah, that's tough.
But no. So the Red Sox offense, I just think in general there's nothing that's really surprised me. Obviously, you'd like to see more from Rafael Devers. I don't think he has an RBI yet. Jackie Bradley hasn't really, you know, was led to believe all offseason that he had this new swing and was going to just turn into Mickey Mantle, but that hasn't really been the case either. Andrew Benintendi, I don't think has a home run yet. So there's like certain little things you can nitpick. But overall, collectively as a unit, I feel fine about the offense, especially once the weather heats up. These guys finally hit their stride. You do get that consistent starting pitching.
And JD Martinez looks like the same guy, which is nice.
Right. So all in all, the offense is good. What do you think of Blake Swihart? Just to touch on your boy.
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much, but I don't know what to make of the catching situation. I don't think Sandy Leon is this fix-all that's going to cure everything. So I think what you have right now is what you should roll with. I think the more the disheartening thing is that Christian Vasquez just continues to not be the defensive wizard that he's supposed to be. I think I like Blake Swihart back there. I think the tandem of Swihart and Vasquez is a good option, and I think he's a good hitter. Swihart, I mean, and I think I did not like how after the first game when Eduardo Rodriguez got lit up that they kind of put it on Blake Swihart because I'm like, what are you telling me that Vasquez is airtight back there? One game with Blake Swihart and you're going to pin it on him. I didn't like that look at all.
Well, it's sort of an easy.
It's just like already
way too easy to draw the line between the Red Sox struggling from the mound and Sandy Leon's absence. It's just a very linear take.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody.
And I don't think it's accurate.
Yeah, but to your point, I like Blake Swihart back there. I think he's legitimately a good hitter, and if he gets consistent at bats, and if he can somehow understand what the hell his role is, if they identify these are the guys you're catching, go out there, prepare for these days. I think he could be a legitimate weapon for this team. He's an athletic catcher, switch hitter that can, he's got gap power to both. It's all over the field. He's got a little bit of pop. We saw him hit a homer to dead center in Seattle or Oakland, wherever the hell it was. And I think he's got a good arm. Is he the best caller of games and receiver of the ball? No, but whatever, tough.
Yeah.
You're not always going to have Pudge Rodriguez back there, for God's sakes. So I like Blake Swihart. I like the tandem. I mean, maybe it just gets to the point where you have to call up Sandy Leon, and in that case, I think it's an indictment on the pitchers. Figure it out. But whatever. I don't know. I hope they stick it out. I don't want to see any panic move to Sandy Leon. Stick it out with Swihart and Vasquez. Let everybody sort of get in a rhythm. Let this team sort of find its bearings, and yeah, I think it'll be fine. But I'm Team Swihart.
So. Oh, I know. That's why I had to ask you.
I just think it's that he is the best, most talented option of the three. So I just don't even understand why it's a debate. I've never understood the concerted effort to put Blake Swihart in the dugout, or for fans to just hate on Blake Swihart. He's clearly the best of the three you have, all around. Maybe not all around. That might be strong, but I just see what you got. And I just think this is the time. They've screwed around with him for his whole career. He came up early in his rookie season when, what was it, when Vasquez had to get Tommy John, and he came up way too early, and he hit like 270 that year. He had a good season. He had like one game where he had 2 homers at Yankee Stadium, and you watched him and said, wow, this guy is as good as they said. And then they screwed around with him, and they put him in left field. He got hurt, been up and down since then, got all these injuries, and it's the fault of the organization. They messed around with him too much and stunted his development. Now I think he's kind of they're sticking to him as a catcher, and now's the time to see what you got in him. Just roll him out there, see what you got. If he ends up flopping and not being any good, then so be it.
But this is it.
This is the time to see what you got.
Break time, see what you have.
Give it to him and give him a long leash. Don't. That's why I hated the reaction after his first start with Rodriguez. I'm like, you're already doing this? Like, let's give it a minute and see how it goes. See what you got with the guy. Rolled him for an extended period of time and see what happens.
Not to mention he's hitting.
He's hitting, exactly.
At the plate, you're seeing that potential.
Yeah.
Suddenly, that spot in the batting order doesn't seem like a black hole. And that could just be another element to this team, because you basically accepted last season that you weren't going to get any offensive production from your catching situation, and
right.
they were good enough to withstand that. Now if things don't get right in the rotation, if Devers and Bradley or whoever really starts to endure these struggles and your offense isn't quite as good, then maybe there are points in your roster that you can't afford to have be these just complete black holes. So if you can get production from him, that's only a plus. Same goes for second base, which Dustin Pedroia coming back in the home opener, 1-for-4, had a single late in the game. What are your thoughts on him, just in his return in general? Because that's just you can't really forecast what you're going to get from him.
No, there's no way.
The overall inactivity over the last 2 seasons.
No, none of us know. I think you have to go forward expecting nothing, and anything you get is a bonus. And I think it's just the fact that he's even back, and he seems to be kind of relatively okay. I think is a testament to him that he was out so long, and he clearly worked his ass off to get back here. So that's great, and it's nice having him on the team. Hitting at the bottom of the lineup is the right spot for him. We'll see.
That's my thing.
There's just no way to know, and to even talk about it is a waste of time, because it's like, who knows what you're going to get.
Like, I would bank on him being like a DFA candidate.
Yeah.
And that's not even that's not a prediction.
Never do that.
But I'm saying to expect level of production that is just not good in general, because that's not a slight on him in the least.
Maybe
that's just the reality of being a 35-year-old player who's been inactive, to say the least, over the last couple of seasons, and has had various injuries, not just the knee surgery, but various injuries throughout his career. It would be gullible to expect him to be this all-star caliber player.
Right, and maybe you get some hits. Maybe his average ends up being decent, 280 or something like that, but the OPS is going to be in the 6s. He's not going to get many homers or doubles because he can't leg anything out anymore. So, for me, a good season,
I think he can make an impact. I think it's possible, but I wouldn't bank on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. For me,
what would be a good season?
A good season would be 280, 7 to 10 homers, and good defense at second base.
So
and I'm not expecting doubles, because I don't think he can just rally around the bases and get to second anymore. So it is what it is, I think.
So essentially, in 2017, played in 105 games, 7 home runs, 62 RBIs, he hit 293. His OPS was 760. Slightly less version than that.
Somewhere around that.
He was a two-win player, which it would put him really in I think he had a 1.9 WAR in 2017, which would make him sort of middle of the pack if you looked at it last year, kind of like a DJ LeMahieu, a Jason Kipnis type, those types of guys. You know what I mean? He's no longer among the elite second basemen. I think that's quite obvious. But if you can get the type of production that you'd get from let's say 15 to 20 ranked second baseman across baseball, then you take that.
One thing you can't count out, that can't be dismissed, is the motivation factor for him, because you got to try and put yourself in his shoes, and that doesn't mean you can be as motivated as you want. Doesn't mean you're going to be able to do anything. But if I'm Dustin Pedroia, I'm thinking, man, I was maybe fringe Hall of Fame, before all this crap started to happen. And if you're a professional athlete and you start thinking Hall of Fame, that has to be a huge motivating factor. And not to mention the chip he's always had on his shoulder for being small and all that stuff. If I'm Dustin Pedroia, I'm working like an absolute maniac, and I'm beyond motivated to come back and try and be, an above-average Major League Baseball player every day. If for no other reason, because he's got all of his World Series, he's got everything. 2 reasons: 1, just to prove people wrong, as he's always done, and 2, maybe sneak into the Hall of Fame. That has to be a huge motivating factor for a guy like that sees the end now and says, well, I I got to do a little bit more if I want even a chance, after being on the ballot like 8 times or something.
Yeah, and another, well, I mean, look, even on opening day, gets the hit in the 9th inning, and that sort of sparked things a little bit. Like I think there is an intangible element to having him back in the fold.
I certainly feel better about having him come up in the 7th spot, or 7th or 8th spot at the bottom of the lineup late in games, better than I did, with what Eduardo Nunez was last year, or Christian Vasquez, or just some of the, the lesser, when Jackie Bradley Jr. is down there. It just feels like there's more of a chance when you get towards the bottom of the lineup that someone's going to get a base hit.
I also think it could have an impact on Xander Bogaerts at short, too. You get sort of that double play tandem back in order for a little bit. I mean,
but it's going to be a tandem
Bogaerts has
between
been a
him
little bit up and down defensively throughout his career, so I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of positive to draw from that whole thing.
Yeah, but I mean, make no mistake, it's going to be a legitimate platoon between Pedroia and Nunez, and whenever Brock Holt gets back from his scratched eyeball.
And that's sort of another layer to that is who's the roster casualty when the dust settles? Brock Holt comes back. You have Holt, Pedroia, and Nunez all sort of vying for that second base position, with Holt and Nunez being able to play other places. But do you go with one less pitcher? What's the move there?
I don't know. It's a really good question.
It's one that
I think you can't cut Brock Holt. They're not going to do that. I don't think they can cut Eduardo Nunez. I mean, maybe it's a trade. I don't know. Maybe
it's looming.
It is looming.
But these things, I mean,
I don't think you can afford to have less pitchers.
Yeah. So it's just.
It's
something that.
Yeah.
Hasn't really been a consideration throughout this entire process, because it's just, let's just kind of get them on the field and go from there. And it just so happens that Brock Holt lands on the DL at the same time he's coming back. And it's just like everything sort of has worked out from that regard. But there's going to come a point, you would hope at least, that everybody's healthy, and then you have to make some sort of roster decision. So
it would be strange, just because, I mean, so much of the marketing of the team revolves around Brock Holt. So it's like I can't picture them getting rid of him. And Nunez, I mean, what do you can't just, I don't know. It's a good question. I have no idea what they're going to do, and I just don't think they can afford to have less pitchers on the roster, given how deep in game starters are not going. So that's interesting.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about, Dakota?
No, I'm buying the Rays.
How much has your opinion of the Red Sox changed in general? I mean, we've broke down specifically some things that are concerning, some things that should iron themselves out. But as a whole, this team's potential, how differently do you view them now, as opposed to when we last did a podcast, which was basically just on the eve of the season?
I view them.
How much has this 12-game sample size impacted your view of the Red Sox's 2019 outlook?
I would not say it's necessarily the 12-game sample size that's affected it. I will say what Chris Sale looks like has made me question what their ceiling could be this season. If Chris Sale is, right now he's the worst pitcher on the team, just about. Maybe Rick Porcello gets that dubious honor. But if Chris Sale is something like this for the rest of the season, how Chris Sale's looked so far, and how far he looks from being anywhere close to all-star caliber has, makes me think that it could be a struggle here, because you need an ace. You have to compete with the Astros and the Yankees and some of the heavy hitters out there. So it's concerning. I'm really not concerned about the rest of the team. I feel like exactly who they are for the most part. Even if you just get sort of the average seasons from everybody, you're still a really, really good team. But if the drop-off with Chris Sale is that steep and that dramatic, it changes things considerably. So that's, to me, it's the biggest storyline of the season for good reason. And you have to keep monitoring it and see what happens.
Yeah.
It's that bad. To me, it's that bad.
I agree.
So.
I still think this is a team that you're going to look up at the end of the season and you'll be right there in the thick of things. Whether they're World Series caliber, I mean, I don't know. Because there are the other teams across the American League good. You were just about to say you're all in on the Rays. I think the Rays are good.
I like the Rays.
I think the Rays are really good.
And so we'll see. I mean, last year you benefited because the American League was so bad that you ran roughshod. And so we just don't know yet. We can assume it's going to be sort of as bad, but we don't know. So if the American League is improved,
I think the AL East is is just going to be much more of a pain in the ass than people want to think.
Yeah. And you know, what if...
The Rays, I think, are legit. I think they're going to be there all season. The Yankees are the Yankees. I think they'll also be in there. And I think the Blue Jays are going to be a pain, especially if they start bringing up some of these young guys, Vlad Guerrero Jr. in particular, like just sort of getting that boost at some point in the season where they're just this kind of that scrappy bunch.
But beyond that, you have to look at it as what are the teams you could be, because it's not your birthright to win the AL East. So you have to realize you might be battling for the second wild card spot. And that doesn't mean you're terrible. I mean, it is what it is. And so you got to look at what if the A's are as good as they were last year? What if the Mariners are, I don't think they're 11-2 good as they are right now, but what if the Mariners end up being fringe wild card? And then you have other teams in the Central. Maybe Minnesota, they're 6-3. Maybe, you know, they were kind of one of our sleeper teams. Maybe they're in the hunt there. And so again, if you start flirting around with those sort of fringe wild card,
the Angels.
Yeah, the Angels, exactly. And so if you keep flirting around with some of these fringe wild card teams, it makes the fact that you start 3-9 that much worse, because you got to dig yourself out of the hole, and then you don't want to be competing with those teams for the second wild card. And if it keeps going like this, it just increases the odds of that happening. So
they all count the same.
But our next episode will probably be in the midst of a 7-game winning streak, and we'll go.
Well, like I said, this is a perfect opportunity for them to get right with another game against the Blue Jays, who they both went into the home opener at 3-8, so it's a team that they should take care of, even if they are that scrappy bunch. And 4 games against the Orioles, punctuated by the Patriots Day game on Monday morning. So it's an opportunity for them to get on the right track before they go into the Bronx for the first time. They got the Yankees, 2 games coming up against the Yankees next week, an off day, and then 3 games against the Rays. So
but the Yankees too. I mean, we don't have time to get into it, but Luis Severino being reevaluated in 6 weeks.
It's not good.
That's
huge.
What is it? His shoulder?
Yeah, rotator cuff.
Yeah, so that has. I mean, come on, that's surgery written all over it.
So
which is a tough. People sleep on rotator cuff surgery. People just think about Tommy John. Rotator cuff is also out for a 1.5 years type of deal. So that could be a big one for the Yankees. So
we'll see. All right. Well, let's get out of here. It's good to be back in here with actually real games to talk about.
Yeah. And people listening at home can't tell, but I found my bat that I like to twirl around with.
You've been wheeling around like a lunatic.
Yep. The perils of ADHD.
In here swinging around the bat, complaining about Game of Thrones that you're locked up in right now.
That's a completely different discussion.
I won't even go down that path right now.
I got a week. I'm in middle of season 3. I got a week to finish before season 8 starts. And I don't think I can do it.
Well, we should get out of here then.
I know. Maybe I'll watch at the desk.
All right. That's enough for us. I'm Ricky Doyle. That's Dakota Randall. This has been the NESN Red Sox podcast. We will catch up perhaps next week.
Yeah.
Maybe the week after. We'll see. Keep it locked in on NESN.com.
Thinking about calling out sick next Wednesday. I haven't done it in a while.
Cat's out of the bag.
Just dropping a surprise.
All right.
I got the runs today. Sorry, boss.
Well, I'll plan ahead.
Aggregate from the toilet, maybe. I don't know.
All right. So. Won't be the first time.
No.
Very versatile contributor here to NESN.com. All right, we're going to get out. Keep it right here at NESN.com. Follow NESN on all forms of social media. You can follow me at the Ricky Doyle. You can follow Dakota.
At Dak Randall.
At Dak Randall. And we will be back very soon as we progress throughout this 2019 baseball season. See you later.
See ya.